Everybody, I'm a little lost. I'm out looking for Ray Kurzweil, so I've got Sheldon here. How do I look? I've teleported in. Give me a high five. Thumbs up. This is Sheldon from BCIC. Oh, okay. Well, I like being in Sheldon. Anyway, I'm really excited. Thank you so much, Andrew Wilson. And I'm really excited to introduce the next person, Terry Stuart, who's the Chief Innovation Officer of Deloitte Canada. As a disruptor, he's in charge of being a constructive disruptor, both for the firm and the clients around the world, creating exponential change and leading in the driver's seat. I think I'm having computer glitches. Can anybody hear that? Anyway, let's put our hands together for Terry.
Hi, Sheldon. How are you doing? Oh, Sheldon, you've gone on mute.
Say that again?
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm fantastic. Thank you.
So, Sheldon, let's use all of your AI and robotics capabilities for some serious questions. Do you know who is actually going to win the Stanley Cup? Toronto Maple Leafs or Vancouver Canucks?
I think that's not one that even a robot would get wrong. We all know it's going to be the Vancouver Canucks.
There we go. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. It is exciting to be here in Vancouver. It's awesome. Every time I get to come, I see how far this city has gone and the province has gone in terms of taking our technology to the next level. I loved the Premier's announcements yesterday of bringing education right down and computer programming right down to the level of K to 12 students, which is amazing. And apparently there are a lot of students upstairs doing coding camp as we speak. Awesome. So today I'm going to talk about some of our research on this whole area of disruption and some of the exponential technologies. I will likely scare you a little bit in terms of some of the technologies that are coming. I'll hopefully educate you on a few things, although this is a pretty switched on audience, so there may not be too many things that you don't know about. And then if we're lucky and I do my job, I inspire you by the end. So that's the goal. Okay, so let's get into it. Here's some of the research that we've done. This is the bad news. 87% of our Canadian companies are actually not prepared for the disruptive technologies that are coming. Very significant number, and we interviewed over 700 different companies across Canada, the US, and beyond. So very significant number not prepared. Here's the even more disconcerting number. 43% of our companies think that they're prepared more than they actually are. So that false sense of self-confidence, very troubling. Let's keep getting into this. So what do we mean by disruption? We use Clayton Christensen, one of the great Harvard professors, we use his definition: a process by which a product or service takes root initially in simple applications at the bottom of a market, so in the areas that nobody really wants to address, and then relentlessly moves up market and displaces traditional competitors. So let's talk about that for a second. Let's rewind, if you can, 5+ years ago and say, 2010, how many of you had a Netflix account in the crowd? There's a few early adopters here. Okay, fast forward 2016, how many of you have a Netflix account? Exactly, the entire audience has one. The early Netflix account, it was a horrible service. You were sending DVDs back and forth in the mail. The content that they had wasn't good. And now, House of Cards and many, many new Netflix original films are being created, and it's easy to access anywhere on any device. So very interesting in terms of the transformation. So classic disruption. If we look at living in an exponential world, this is why we think this is such an important topic for Canada. Our brains, and this is my minor attempt at neuroscience, but our brains are actually trained to think linearly. As we go through it, we have a linear progression. All of the technologies that we have been improving by 5%, 10%, 15% per year, and we get that. We understand it, we plan our businesses on it. The problem is in the early stage of adoption on new technologies that are exponential, it looks like it's actually a linear curve. So when you're going 0.01, 0.02, 0.03, or sorry, 0.04 in your projection, it looks linear, and our brains extrapolate that. And we create that and say, oh, this is what it looks like. The problem is if you're actually on an exponential trend, it's a very different trajectory. And so our brains are actually trained to think linearly, and meanwhile, some of the technologies that we're dealing with are moving exponentially. So let's do a little math quiz. It's a bit early in the morning, but we can go through it. This is a clever audience. We're coming up on Super Bowl time. 30 linear steps down the football field. You go 30 yards, okay? 30 exponential steps. Let's talk about it. How many? Shout out an answer. How far do you go? Do you get the whole football field? Across Canada? Shout it out. A billion miles, a billion kilometers, a billion steps. Steps, okay. Here's how far you go. 26 times around the world. Most of us, our brains had trouble computing that, right? That's actually 3 times to the moon, right? Most of our brains have trouble. It's more than a billion steps, by the way. Most of our brains had trouble computing that. So it's an amazing thing. So that's why we are worried about exponential technologies, because if we don't actually organize our companies, whether you're trying to be a disruptor and a startup, or you're actually in a traditional business and you're trying to take advantage of these things, if you're not prepared for that, it's going to be a problem. So let's take a peek. Star Wars. Has anybody seen this movie? Star Wars, the new one? Yeah? Awesome movie. If you haven't gone, I should probably just ask who hasn't gone, because it's now officially the hottest selling of all time movie. But you can see, they're going through, the Millennium Falcon getting to blow up the Death Star. In 1983, that was tens of millions of dollars to just create that capability. Now, fast forward to 2015, this is a video of an autonomous plane with somebody actually trailing it. So you can see the autonomous plane going, and this is what the plane sees. Okay, so it sees actually all of the things that are in its way. It can actually track whether there are trees in its way, something that it's going to hit. So look at it, it determines that tree's too big, it's going to hit it, it needs to move. That plane, that autonomous plane, not available yet in stores, but coming soon, $600. $600, over $10 million just to create a simulation. So you think about how fast this is going and changing our space. Let's look at industries and why this is important to traditional industries. Over the last 10 years, if you were in the travel agency business, over half the travel agents in the US, disappeared. They were not there anymore. So if any of you have kids, if your kids are training to be a travel agent, bad idea, okay? Bad idea. What happened simultaneous to that, Expedia quadrupled their revenue stream. So you can see, the traditional manual services are going down, and the taking advantage of the internet and the capabilities available are going up significantly. So let's talk about unicorns. And I understand there was a virtual unicorn that was landed right here on the stage yesterday. So let's talk about real unicorns out in life. Unicorns defined as those companies that create $1 billion valuation, okay? Shopify, fantastic Canadian success story, right? E-commerce retailer and enabling technology. In 2004, they were lightning fast to get to $1 billion valuation. At that time, 9 years was really, really quick to get to $1 billion valuation. Keep going fast forward. Spotify, any Spotify users? This is wonderful. All the music you want, $8, $9 a month, it's fantastic. So Spotify, 6 years to get to $1 billion. Keep going through. Airbnb, 4 years to $1 billion. Has anybody stayed in an Airbnb, by the way, here? Oh, there we go. Airbnb, big Airbnb users here. Fantastic. By the way, if you go to New York in December, they jack the prices of all the hotels in New York in December. Once the tree goes up, it's quadruple. The basic Marriott was going to be about $650 for me. I ended up staying in an Airbnb for $210. They had a whole hot tub up on the penthouse floor. Amazing 2-bedroom experience right off of Times Square. So if you're ever going there for shopping or business around that time of year, it's a great deal. Uber, I know Uber's a little bit of a controversy here in Vancouver, but Uber, 2 years to get to $1 billion. Oculus, anybody tried the Oculus? This is fantastic stuff, right? 18-year-old who decided that, he didn't want to get nauseous when he was gaming. So, he created the Oculus to try and change that whole dynamic. Just over a year. Slack. Now this is, if you're not using Slack in your company, this is collaboration software. These guys went from idea in their basement to $1 billion valuation in 11 months. Idea, $1 billion. I keep telling my son, come on, you got to do one of these. But Slack is amazing, and most of the high-tech startups and now more emerging organizations are starting to use Slack. So why is this important? This is obviously important if you're trying to create one of these unicorns, but if you're not and you're trying to collaborate, these guys have money, they've got venture capital, they're figuring out how to buy other companies because they're valued at a high level, so they're going to move faster and faster and faster. A lot of people say, well, Terry, this is just the dot-com bubble all over again. Not really. These guys have real revenue streams, and they're actually driving core business models. So that's kind of that side of the space. We're going to look at 5 technologies as part of our research that are on the exponential curve, and here's the ones that we're taking on.
The future is here now. 5 disruptive technologies are bringing significant and permanent change to Canada's business landscape. Advanced robotics, artificial intelligence, collaborative connected platforms, networks, and advanced manufacturing all have tremendous potential to wreak havoc on businesses across the country. The rapid advance of these technologies can no longer be overlooked.
So you saw the technology that we focused on. There are many technologies. We do a lot of work with Singularity University in the US. It's a think tank down in Palo Alto that Ray Kurzweil, who spoke yesterday, he was one of the co-founders of Singularity, and they created it because they said a lot of companies and organizations, and in fact governments, don't really understand the pace of which exponential technologies are coming and how they need to be adopted. So we picked off 5 of them in terms of our research. There are more: nanotechnology, synthetic biology, et cetera, cybersecurity, that are not covered in this, but we picked the ones that we felt were pervasive across industries. So here we go: AI, networks and sensors, so the whole Internet of Things, advanced manufacturing and 3D printing, advanced robotics, and then collaborative platforms and the whole notion of crowdsourcing. So that's what I'm going to blast through, and we're going to talk about where that goes and what some of the examples are. So AI, displacing human workers in professional services. How many of you saw Watson taking on Jeopardy winner Ken Jennings? So this was very sad for Ken Jennings. This guy is one of the brightest guys in the world. He had won Jeopardy 26 times. You got to be pretty bright to win Jeopardy that many times. And he got smoked by Watson. And this was kind of like back in the day, we had Big Blue versus Garry Kasparov playing chess because they didn't think that computers could play chess like that. Now we're taking it forward and saying, how does AI and cognitive science actually apply, and can it attack unstructured data like Jeopardy deals with? So that was quite amazing. But Watson's covering a whole range of topics. Everything from Watson is becoming a doctor, so it's learning how to do medical procedures. Watson's becoming a lawyer, so lots of stuff. This is one that I thought was interesting because it's a very, very simple example of the kind of power that Watson has applied to mergers and acquisitions. Oh, we got a little aggressive there on our clicking. One sec.
Watson, I need help with acquisitions.
Hello. How can I help you with mergers and acquisitions?
Watson, show me companies with revenue between $25 million and $60 million pertaining to analytics.
Let's see what I can find. I found 87 companies.
Nice.
Okay, so that's a good start. What do you think, Brian?
But I was doing some homework, actually. I think we should pull in that Watson Strategy Group document. There's a lot of key concepts in there. Let's feed it to Watson.
All right. Watson, please regard this as cognitive strategy.
Watson, show me companies with revenue between $15 million and $60 million pertaining to cognitive strategy.
Let's see what I can find.
Yeah, this is nice.
I found 112 companies.
Now we're getting a lot in here. And we can see we're getting some connections to it.
Watson, show me companies that are about analytics and cognitive strategy that are most similar to the companies named Wolfram Alpha and Kawasaki Robotics.
I found 3 companies similar to the ones you specified.
Beautiful.
Well, let's see what we think of these.
Dive a little deeper. Let's compare these things.
Sure. Watson, show me a decision table.
Here is a decision table that will enable you to compare companies side by side.
Watson, place the companies named Wolfram Alpha and Kawasaki Robotics and Cognalytics and Raytheon BBN Technologies and Decisive Analytics in the decision table.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay, but I think we need a little more than that. We need some other attributes. Watson, place the attributes named revenue and employees and corporate structure in the decision table.
Okay.
All right, so now we've got this side-by-side comparison. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Watson, give me a suggestion.
I have a suggestion.
So I don't know if it's just me, but is it kind of weird that the M&A analyst in that almost sounded more robotic than Watson? Anyway, but you can see very diverse kinds of applications of artificial intelligence capability, and that's just going to get better and better. That was, in fact, a real-time simulation. Obviously, there's more that goes into merger and acquisition analysis, but we have a whole merger and acquisition team, and so we're thinking about how do we apply Watson to some of those or other analytic capabilities to those kind of problems. So let's move into networks and sensors. So this is a very interesting space, the whole Internet of Things, and it's just starting to hit its stride. So this is a company, anybody heard of Blue Rover? Blue Rover, one or two? So Blue Rover is a company out of Waterloo, Ontario. Grew up in the Communitech Hub, so incubator accelerator out in Waterloo, and fantastic organization. So they have networks and sensors that they then bring in through a consolidated hub, and they actually provide analytic data and dashboards to drive out the capability and insights for their organizations. And they've applied it to a wide variety of industry solutions. So let's take a peek. So this is a greenhouse, and they're actually measuring all the moisture level in the individual plants. So they're sensing it, they're bringing it into the central pod, and then they're controlling how the irrigation happens. This woman, she's wandering through, she's checking out her iPad. She looks reasonably happy. She doesn't realize her job's about to disappear. But so off we go, and we can actually do irrigation to individual plants because they grow and they accept moisture in a different way. So they can change how they do it, much more efficient in terms of that. Food and health safety. The food and health safety is all about how hot are the ovens, how cold are the refrigerators, and do I have a sanitary work environment? All things that can be measured using sensors. So this is them actually doing this with Boston Pizza. They've rolled it out. And you also have to check the entire food health safety chain. What's the temperature? What's the humidity in the truck that's bringing the food to the restaurant? This guy, he seems to be doing some bad stuff. You can tell he's a bad guy. He's got the black hat and the hoodie, right? So he's a bad guy, but he's caught on camera. I love the security guy. Watch this guy. He's checking out his stocks. He looks at, oh yeah, lock's compromised. Police have been alerted. I can go back to reading the paper and checking my coffee. Another job that's going to go away. So you start to think about this. I love their tagline, infinite intelligence. I would love to have infinite intelligence. But so they're taking networks and sensors and altering fundamentally supply chains, organizational models. How do they report back to the government on is our food safe and are we delivering it at the right temperature, et cetera. So very interesting in the capabilities. Homegrown here in Canada. Done at an incubator and accelerator. Loretto, who actually owns that company and is the CEO, has done 3 other companies previously. Great success story. They're already doing things with the telcos and with a number of different verticals. They've tackled the food safety vertical. They're going after the transportation vertical and also the healthcare one. How do you use those sensors to monitor in hospital rooms and operating rooms, et cetera? So very interesting kind of capabilities. So advances in robotics are fundamentally changing human labor. And this isn't the robotics anymore of the auto plant where I pick up the windshield, put it on the car, pick up the windshield, put it on the car. Very advanced robotics. So let's check out these guys. Simbi produces this robot called Tally, very similar to Sheldon, who came out to visit me, right? But this one actually does autonomous shelf auditing and analytics. So let's check that out. Very peppy music that goes along with this video. So it's actually now, you're going to see it's coming around the store, checking out of stock, price errors, low stock, while it passes by because of the sensors that it has on it. So real-time data that can be sent out to the organization, to the retailer, whether it's Sobeys or Loblaws, et cetera. What's interesting to me is it's actually aware of the people around it as well. So it's interacting with them, it's stopping if somebody's trying to walk. So you don't have to wait till the end of the day to do your shelf audits and your stock checks. Very interesting changes in the whole retail environment. There are robots that are doing security guard passes and checks. So Bart Mall Cop, not going to happen anymore, right? We'll have a robot doing that. All kinds of applications for robots at very low cost. So let's talk about autonomous cars. So this one's the favorite topic that everybody likes to get into. So this one is my favorite right now. This is the Tesla X-Wing. Tesla X, sorry. The Falcon Wing doors, if you haven't seen the video of this, it's amazing. It's like the old DeLorean on Back to the Future. The doors come up and go out. This is their SUV that'll be available this fall, September 2016. So amazing. If you think about autonomous cars and what kind of impact they can have, everything from insurance to the infrastructure, how we build our roads, to the kind of capacity that they can drive. Do we need parking or not? How do we do real estate? Where people live today is generally based on how far they feel like driving. So if the car picks me up and I can do my work, maybe I live further away from the city. Auto manufacturing fundamentally changing. So I think this is very interesting. So let's check out how far this can go. Maybe there. Oh, yeah, so this is the actual dates that are being predicted by the auto manufacturers. So you can see Tesla, one of the most advanced, 2021, I think they're just sandbagging on that. But 2020 for Ford, 2024, you can see all of them are in the next 10 years, give or take, right? So let's see, and we've put a little question mark beside Apple because they haven't done any formal announcements, but they're clearly working on this whole space. So let's take a look at how far this goes.
Particularly those in dense urban areas, understand the difficulty in finding a legal parking spot. An over-the-air software update will be going out to vehicles that allow Model S to automatically detect the presence of a meter maid or law enforcement officer. If Model S detects an imminent ticket, it will deploy countermeasures to deter the ticket writer from issuing the ticket. The windshield wipers and washers will be activated, deterring the ticket writer. In the event that the ticket issuer persists, Model S will enter ticket avoidance mode. In ticket avoidance mode, the vehicle will autonomously drive in circles around the block until the ticket issuing threat is no longer detected. If the threat of a ticket has passed, the vehicle will park in its original parking spot. Otherwise, it will continue to drive around the block. A message will be pushed via the mobile app, alerting the user that ticket avoidance mode has been activated and Model S is on the move.
So I love this part.
The autonomous driving summon feature will automatically be activated in ticket avoidance mode, and Model S will come and pick you up.
So what'd you notice there?
With parking ticket deterrence,
He got in the passenger side. He got in the passenger side. So I love that video. So this was actually on April Fool's that Tesla put this up. But by the way, they have all of that technology today. The 7.1 download, 7.0 has autopilot and auto lane change. 7.1 download as of a week ago actually has something called the summon feature. Think about that for a moment. You're not in the car, you press summon, the car comes to you. Kit, it's 2016, right? So lots of different fun with that. Earthcast, this is an amazing Vancouver success story. Hopefully you guys know it. So these guys actually put 3D color HD cameras on the International Space Station. So think about that. That's pretty cool. For free, you can get a streaming download of anything around the world from this site. So you can start to see, and it can go down, supposedly down to within a meter. So you thought the drones were a little bit intrusive. Everybody can track where you are and what you're doing now. So they can check out this little boat that's moving along. They can check out where the London Eye is, all for free. Their model is going to be paid for companies that want to actually track trending, where there's actually populations moving, where there's traffic moving, all of those kinds of things. Very interesting. All in high definition, delivered just if you have an internet connection. So, advanced manufacturing, 3D printing, lots been heard about that. How old do you think 3D printing is? We've heard about a ton in the last 3 years, but 5 years, 10 years? 30 years old. It's 30 years old, right? So it's a classic example of chipping along, starts to hit the knee of the curve, and now it's pervasive and it's everywhere. So if we look at 3D printing, and this was very illustrated to me, I had the chance to go down to Singularity to their Innovation Partnership Program. It's a 4-day intensive session. I went down in 2013, and I took these pictures. So Hershey's had been thinking about 3D printing for chocolate. Their goal is they want to have a 3D printer in everyone's kitchen. Okay? So you can 3D print chocolate, you can 3D print cakes, all of that. They were mucking around with some stuff in Hershey, Pennsylvania. They came down in March to Singularity and they said, "Ooh, 3D Systems, you guys are doing some pretty cool stuff. Let's go check it out. We're going to bring our team down and work with you." in a pilot. The cupcake down below was the 5th anniversary of Singularity, and the little confectionery on top of it is the 3D Systems logo. When I went in September, so idea in March, when I went in September, they 3D printed the confectionery on the top, the 3D Systems logo. This is 2013, remember. I took a little selfie of me eating that because this, for me, was an iPod moment, right? iPod, oh my God, I can put 400 of my CDs on this little device and carry it anywhere. That's awesome. This was one of those transformative moments of actually eating 3D printed food. Now they can 3D print the cupcake. You can 3D print pizza, which is the universal, deal breaker. So all kinds of interesting stuff. They now have 3D printed meat. 3D printed meat by a Singularity company called Modern Meadow. Doesn't taste particularly good, but it takes a lot less greenhouse gases. 3D printed limbs, so you can take a scan of one of your legs and actually 3D print it on the other one. Pretty sexy looking limb there. 3D printed running shoes. Nike's had this for a couple years, but now you can get all kinds of 3D printed shoes. Most of us, by the way, have one shoe that's a half size different than the other, so a 9 on one foot and an 8.5 on the other. Instead of having to go and sneak them out of the boxes to get the right size and leave somebody else stuck with the wrong sizes, you can now get a 9 printed and an 8.5 printed for yourself. Very interesting. 3D printed houses. This house was 3D printed in less than 24 hours in China. Not a particularly exciting house to live in, but nonetheless, you can actually 3D print the physical house. Local Motors, if you're into cars, you can go online and check out Local Motors. They had a design competition. They do custom designs for cars and motorcycles and so on. They had a design competition in 2014, and that is the first 3D printed car. It's called the Strati. Everything on the car except the core chassis and the wiring was all 3D printed. The tires, the wheels, the seats, the engine, all of it was 3D printed. The prize money for that competition, $5,000. $5,000. But they're the world's first 3D printed car. Space station, this is a fantastic example of 3D printing. It's a bad day on the space station when one of your bolts breaks off and you don't have a spare part. Right? Like that's a bad day, especially if it's holding in like the windshield and things. Demonstrating that I'm not Chris Hadfield here. So anyway, so they have figured out how to put a 3D printer on the space station that can 3D print in metal. So any part has a problem, you can actually just send up the CAD/CAM drawings and print it. Amazing. If you're hanging out on the space station for months, that's a good thing, right? So lots and lots of different industries that are being affected by 3D printing. These guys are very cool. Another Vancouver-based company, Aspect Biosystems, so 3D bioprinting, creating human tissues with 3D printing. So for the pharmaceutical companies to test, they can print the tissue and then they can actually test their pharmaceuticals on that tissue, making it much safer. They don't have to do as much testing with animals and or long clinical trials. Very interesting stuff. I was talking backstage with one of the other speakers, and there's another company doing something similar, and they've been able to create trachea. Someone had a very damaged trachea. They 3D printed a trachea and actually injected it into her body, and she's now living where they didn't think she would actually be able to live before. Very interesting technology. Brings with it massive ethical and decisions around what we can do, should we actually do it. But fascinating capabilities. The last one, connected collaborative platform. So this is all about crowdsourcing. So let's take a look at where this is going. We've been looking at this because we run a professional services company, and we do a lot of things ranging from strategy work to human capital work to technology building, lots of interesting stuff. TEDx and Wikistrat are companies where you can put a question out and in a span of a week, get an answer back for a small amount of money. So for example, if I want to know how big is the heating and ventilating equipment market in Rio de Janeiro, that's a very precise question. I can put it up to 10x, and in a week for $25,000, I get an answer because they've talked to the best experts, ex-Whirlpool people, ex-Honeywell people, and that are living in Brazil, and they've got an answer back. Well, we have a very large strategy practice, and that's something that could be disruptive. So we're thinking about how do we work with them. We're doing lots of pilots and figure out how to embed that in our capability. If you come across to labor and process, gig walk is pretty cool. So instead of doing mystery shopping where you hire a mystery shopping company, you can actually go to gig walk and say, I want to go and do tests in a bunch of my core shops. I want to find out, how many people are there, what's the queue in the line. I want to go to a competitor's shop and find all that stuff. You can put it up on GigWalk, and for $5, anybody can sign up and go and they'll take a picture or they'll do something to capture the information and give it back, and they get $5. People will do amazing things for $5, I find. So check out GigWalk. And by the way, you can sign up. Anybody can sign up to do this. So it's actually tapping into the crowd to get a much better set of information back to you. And then finally on technology and data science, TopCoder is one that tackles the whole notion of how do I have spot coding capabilities. They have 1 million programmers now in their database. So if you need something done in Unity for the Oculus Rift, like there's not a massive number of those people, but you will be able to find them if you go to TopCoder. The US government is now saying, if you want to apply for one of our contracts, you have to have a TopCoder score. So Deloitte has a TopCoder score because we want to do US government projects. We'll still have all of our programmers, but there will be others that we bring in at a cost-effective rate into the mix. So very interesting kind of capability. And Kaggle is on the data science part. So let's take a look at Kaggle. So these guys are very interesting. So Jeremy Howard used to be the CEO, and they've done some fantastic stuff. So they basically take a problem, they source up the data, they put it up into the crowd, they have tools that people use and basic tools, and they have a competition. So that's the sort of fundamentals of how the model operates. So Allstate came to them and said, we're one of the biggest property and casualty insurers in the world. We think we're pretty good at claims prediction. This is the heartbeat of a property and casualty company. If you can figure out, based on where I live, what my job is, what my background is, what my driving record is, how likely am I to get in an accident, okay? So they said, we have 120 data scientists, PhD level folks. We think we're pretty good at this. In fact, the industry tells us we're pretty good at this, but what the heck? We'll try this crowdsourcing stuff just to see, okay? So they went through and they took 3 years of data. They had 2 more years of data that were the actual result, okay? But they took 3 years of historical data and they anonymized it and they put it up into the cloud. Off they went, okay? They knew what the answer was, remember, right? Because they have the 2 years of data that's after the core date. So they had, in their competition with Kaggle, there were 202 players, 107 teams. The teams self-formed with each other, so that they didn't organize them. They just said, okay, I like this team, I'm going to go work with them. They got a 271% improvement in their algorithm. 271% improvement. 9 weeks. That whole competition took 9 weeks, okay? This is the heartbeat of a property casualty company. It cost them $10,000. So think about that, right? They went into the crowd, and the point of all this is not that we should stop hiring data scientists. By the way, we have a very big data science and analytics practice. Still keep hiring them, but you have to look at some of these other models because no matter how smart the people working for your organization are, there are other people in the world that are smarter at that. Right? It's just one of those sad realizations you have to come to accept, right? What's interesting is the people that won the competition had never worked in insurance. They didn't have university degrees, and they used basic tools, open source tools, on laptops to solve the problem. So think about where the crowd goes. If you're interested in this topic, Salim Ismail, another co-founder of Singularity, Canadian, wrote a book called Exponential Organizations that's very interesting and gets into some of the depth on this. These guys, another great Vancouver success story, a little on the smaller side and more reasonable. They looked at orthotics and some of the challenges on people getting the right insoles for their feet, and they said, well, what if we could do something where we could use our phone, we could scan our foot, figure out what the insole should look like, customize it a little bit, and go online. Kickstarter, anybody bought anything on Kickstarter? I will warn you, Kickstarter and Indiegogo, very fun, very addictive, and your families will get upset with you. But so Kickstarter, you can crowdfund things. So people put an idea up and you can pre-buy it. So instead of going to venture capitalists or angel investors to get money, they put their idea up, you give them money for the new product, and then they go and develop it and build it, and you get some of the early adoption. So you got to be patient in this world because sometimes the products take longer to come out, but very cool stuff. So they got funded. They were looking for $50,000. As of yesterday, literally yesterday, they had $109,000. So they already reached double their goal, and away they went. So fundamentally new model for people to actually get funding for projects that they want to go and do. So those are really, the things that we look at across the continuum of the technologies. The challenges we have in Canada, and this is why we're so passionate about this topic, our businesses have a much higher risk aversion than US and other global competitors. We have a great trajectory on new startups. We're awesome. We're 25% better than the US and other countries, but we're horrible at actually getting those to be high growth companies, staying in Canada and continuing to grow. So we got to do something about it. In addition, our businesses actually think that they're spending more and investing more than they really are, and the competition's moving ahead. So there is hope for some of this, and we dug deeper on it. So let's take a look. And by the way, the deeper dive on the survey research that we've done is available online. But we looked at 4 attributes. Awareness, are the companies aware and informed about the changes coming? Culture, do they have innovative behavior that they're promoting inside the firm? Organizational agility, this is going to be one of the big things coming, right? It's not about are you the fastest, but you have to be the fastest to adopt and adapt to the kind of change that's coming. And then are you investing in this kind of technology? So we talked about the 87% of the firms. This organization and this group is probably in the highly prepared. You're switched on, you're at the conference to understand about this kind of stuff, and that's awesome. So let's say you're in the 13%. Bad news is your customers, your alliance partners, your other players in your mix and in your supply chain are likely in the 35% unprepared. The unprepared, by the way, didn't know about the technologies, didn't have any strategy for the technologies, and weren't investing in them. The highly prepared knew about them, had strategies, and were starting. We didn't say you have to be world-class in it. We just said you actually have a game plan and you're starting to do something about it. So it's worrisome that the unprepared is so big here in Canada. So let's take a really quick look at some of the things that we're seeing as success factors from those 13%. Increasing the R&D spend. They're getting serious about their R&D spend, and it depends on the industry, but anything from 2% even up to 15 to 20%, depending on the kind of organization. Sustaining innovation and being dedicated to it inside the organization. And this one's interesting, operating internationally. What do you think is the percentage of Canadian companies that export? Shout out some numbers. 50%? Any other ones? 20, 18, 3.6%. Now, that's including all size companies, right? So we have hairdressers, they're probably not going to export, right? We got a lot of different size companies, but 3.6%. The companies that actually exported were much more successful in this model. Why is that? They had to compete globally and move as quickly. They had resilience of markets. Right? So if something's going down in Canada, maybe if oil's not quite at the price we'd like it to be, oh yeah, that's now. So if something like that's happening, you have other resilient markets that you're operating in. So very interesting. By the way, the companies that exported lived their life expectancy of their company was 16 years longer than the ones that didn't export. Like to like. So all of that works, and the results come. If you actually, the highly prepared companies, if they did those things, they actually had a much higher percentage of increase in revenue over their previous 5 years. So do the right things, and the results are showing that they come. So let's take a look at the final steps through here. So dramatic things that you can do to change the game here. So cultivate your awareness, frontline reports, curiosity, get somebody that's thinking about sensing inside your organization, engage in an ecosystem, and invest in innovation. Here's how we think about innovation ecosystems. This is a big deal, a much longer topic, but you have to be working with some of the accelerators and the incubators that are out there. There are some fantastic ones across the country, whether it's Mars or Communitech or 111, ones that you may or may not have heard of. Here in your own backyard, Wavefront, BCTECH, And then the virtual ones, BCIC and the work going on in Surrey, et cetera. So lots of different things. How many of you have been to one of these incubators in the last year? So there's a pretty good set of hands, which is very exciting. When I do that discussion in Toronto and some of the other areas, it's never as many folks with their hands up. This is essential both for the companies coming up through the incubators, as well as for corporations starting to plug in. We do a lot of work with Communitech down in Waterloo. They have now Canadian Tire, TD Bank, Manulife, Google are all there, and so is Deloitte, because we want to learn from the startups as quickly as we can, get some of the startup mojo and bring it out to market. So thinking about an ecosystem, and it's not just about the incubators, accelerators, but you gotta go through this space. Fostering organizational agility, get some of your staff empowered to make decisions. Think about really rapid processes for iteration. If we think about culture, you've got to get top down and bottom up to drive innovation inside the organization. You have to think about your innovation ambition and use real metrics. I have a great job, right, driving innovation within one of the greatest professional services firms, but I have to put $100 million of bottom line revenue on our books here in Canada. So it's serious stuff as well as much as it's fun stuff. If you look at this space, we acquired Monitor Group a couple of years ago. And one of the crown jewels that came out of Monitor Group was Doblin. Doblin has been researching innovation for 30 years since Jay Doblin founded it. And here are 4 tenets. Be explicit about what you're trying to do on innovation. Look beyond. Everybody talks about product, like the Apple example, but Apple's successful not just because they have good products. They change the network model, they change the business model, they change the customer experience when you go to the store. Think about unconventional insights, and this is a longer discussion, but design thinking and ethnographic research, big deal. And then make sure you're disciplined in your organization. So when we look at that, we define the ambition. Am I going to innovate inside my core? Existing products, existing markets, but doing them faster, better, cheaper? Or am I actually going to go into adjacencies, new markets, new kind of products that I'm going to get? Or am I going to fundamentally transform? And if you're a CFO or you're somebody running the organization, you need to think about a portfolio of investments across that. And whether it's 70-20-10 or something different, think about your ambition matrix. When we had Doblin, we got them into the Deloitte family, we said, well, let's do something unconventional. We're going to take all of the thought leadership and research that we have on this topic, and we're just going to publish it as a book. So we published a book called The 10 Types of Innovation. It starts to demystify the different types. When you have a job title like I do, it's pretty annoying because everybody comes up to you every day, hey, did you innovate something today? Right? So it's pretty annoying. So we actually demystified it and said, here's a wide variety of innovations that you need to think about, from configuration to product offerings all the way to customer experience. The book's available at Amazon, and so I'm not trying to sell the book, but it helps actually think about the different types of innovation and how do you build sustainable innovation in your organization. So effective resourcing in the crowd, get into the crowd, try some different things there, access your technology and expertise, and we are going to be in a world of continuous training of our people, so you got to be prepared for that. So that's kind of what we've got. Canadian businesses, we can do a lot to withstand the storm, and we get our real Canadian mandate up. We're very good at being successful, but we have to act on this topic now. So that's what I have for you. Hopefully we took you from a little bit of the fear through some of the education, and hopefully you're motivated as we go forward. Thanks. Here's the to-do list. Oh, now away we go.
Thank you, Terry. I don't know about you, Don, but I need one of those Tesla cars. That was, who wants one of those, right? I get so many tickets every year. That would be amazing. So thank you for introducing me to that. What year did you say it would be coming out?
The Tesla X will be this fall. In Canada, probably a year spring.
And
the S, by the way, is crazy good, so you should get the S.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, Terry. Really
Thanks.
appreciate it. Okay, next up.